It was Christmas Eve, and the house felt different than usual. Not warm, not festive, just quiet in a way that made me feel like I was the only person left awake in the world. Outside, the snow had been falling for hours. It covered the driveway, the lawn, the trees, and even the road, muting every sound. The kind of snow that makes everything feel unreal. I was completely alone that night. No family staying over, no neighbors close enough to hear anything strange. Just me and the house. The Christmas tree stood in the corner of the living room, glowing softly. Red lights, green lights, gold ornaments reflecting faint shapes onto the walls. I remember thinking how still everything felt, like the night was holding its breath. I walked toward the kitchen to refill my mug, passing by the front window without even looking outside. I'd walked past that window dozens of times already that night. But this time, something made me stop. I don't know if it was instinct, or fear, or something else entirely. I just knew I needed to look. That's when I saw it. At first, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. A dark shape standing out in the snow, right where my yard met the street. It didn't move. It didn't shift its weight. It didn't even look like it was affected by the wind or the cold. It was just there. I stood frozen, staring through the glass. My reflection stared back at me, pale and tense, layered over the image of that thing outside. I told myself it had to be a person. It had arms, legs, a head. But something about it felt wrong. People don't stand like that. Perfectly straight, perfectly still. I slowly reached for the curtain and pulled it back just a little more. My hand was shaking so badly the fabric rattled softly. The figure was closer than I realized, much closer. It was facing my house, facing my window. And suddenly the thought hit me. What if it had been standing there for a long time? What if it was already there, watching, before I noticed it? I felt my stomach twist. My heart started pounding harder. I whispered, "Hello?" The word barely escaped my mouth. It felt too loud in the silence. No response. No movement. The snow continued to fall around the figure, piling up slowly on its shoulders and head. And still, it didn't react. That's when I noticed the ground around it. The snow was smooth, untouched. There were no footprints leading up to where it stood. None at all. My chest tightened as the realization sank in. Whatever that thing was, it hadn't walked there. I took a slow step back from the window. The floor creaked beneath my foot, loud in the quiet house. That's when it moved. Just one step forward, slow, heavy. The crunch of snow was faint, but unmistakable. My entire body locked up. Then another step. I could see it more clearly now. Still no face, no eyes, just a darker shape against the white snow. I backed away again, my breath shallow and shaky. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but fear kept me rooted in place. The figure stopped once more. It stood there, closer than before, as if waiting for me to make the next move, waiting, patiently. I turned slowly and moved toward the front door. I locked it, then the deadbolt, then every other lock in the house. When I finally looked back toward the window, the yard was empty. No figure, no footprints, just the snow falling silently.
I didn't sleep that night. And even now, years later, when Christmas Eve comes and the snow starts to fall, I close the curtains early because I still wonder, how long it stood there before I noticed it. Christmas night has a different kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that feels stretched thin, like it could tear at any moment. That night, I was alone in my apartment. Everyone else had gone home to their families. I stayed behind, telling myself I didn't mind. Outside my window, snow fell steadily, blanketing the parking lot and the street below. Street lights reflected off the ice, making everything glow faintly orange and white. Inside, the only light came from a small Christmas tree I'd set up in the corner. Its lights blinked slowly, almost lazily, like they were struggling to stay awake. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling on my phone, when I heard it for the first time. A bell. Just one soft chime. At first, I smiled. I thought it was someone outside. Maybe kids messing around, maybe someone walking past with decorations. Then I remembered something important. It was almost midnight, and there was no one else around. I leaned forward on the couch, listening. The apartment was completely silent again. I told myself I imagined it. Stress, loneliness. The mind does strange things when you're tired. Then I heard it again. This time, it was closer. The sound was unmistakable now. A small bell, like the kind you'd hang on a Christmas wreath. My stomach tightened. I muted my phone and stood up slowly. I didn't want to make any noise. I didn't want whatever it was to know I was listening. I walked toward the hallway. Every step felt louder than it should have. The bell rang again. This time, it sounded like it came from inside my apartment. My breath caught in my throat. I stood there, frozen, staring down the dark hallway. The door to my bedroom was open slightly. The bathroom light was off. Everything looked exactly the same as it had minutes ago. And yet, something felt different. The bell rang again. Closer still. It wasn't random anymore. There was a rhythm to it now. Slow, deliberate. I whispered, "Hello?" without thinking. The sound of my own voice made my skin crawl. No response. Just the bell. I backed toward the front door. My hand brushed against the lock. I twisted it quietly, listening for any reaction. The bell stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. I waited. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Just when I started to relax, the bell rang again. This time, it came from right behind me. I spun around. There was nothing there. No movement, no shadow. But hanging on the inside of my front door was a small Christmas bell. One I didn't own. I didn't sleep that night. And ever since then, whenever I hear bells at Christmas, I freeze and I listen very carefully to make sure they aren't inside my home.
Christmas night always feels different when you're alone. The decorations don't feel cheerful. The lights don't feel warm. They just make the darkness around them feel deeper. That night, I was home by myself. Snow had been falling since late afternoon, covering the porch and driveway in thick layers. The world outside felt cut off, quiet, and distant. Inside, the house was dimly lit. Only the Christmas tree lights were on. They blinked slowly, reflecting off the walls and windows. I remember sitting on the couch, half watching something on TV, half dozing off. Everything felt slow, heavy. That's when I heard a sound that pulled me fully awake. A soft knock. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to make my heart skip. I muted the TV and listened. The house went completely silent again. I told myself it was nothing, snow falling off the roof, branches hitting the siding. Then came another knock. This time it was slower, heavier, like someone knocking with no intention of being invited inside. I stood up slowly and walked toward the front window. My footsteps sounded too loud on the floor. I pulled the curtain back just enough to see the porch, and that's when I saw him. A man stood on my porch, right in front of the door, facing the house. He wasn't knocking anymore. He wasn't moving at all. He just stood there. Snow was falling steadily, landing on his shoulders and head, but he didn't brush it off, didn't shift his weight, didn't react in any way. I couldn't see his face clearly through the glass and darkness, just the outline of his body, tall, still. I waited for him to move, for him to knock again, for him to say something. Nothing happened. My chest felt tight, my hands started to shake. I checked the time on my phone. It was almost midnight, Christmas night. No one should have been there. I thought about calling out to him through the door, but something deep in my gut told me not to. People don't stand like that, perfectly still, perfectly silent. Minutes passed. The man didn't move. Snow continued to pile up around his boots, but I couldn't see any footprints leading up to the porch. That's when fear really set in. He hadn't walked there. He hadn't climbed the steps. He was just there. I slowly locked the front door, then the deadbolt. The click sounded deafening in the quiet house. The man didn't react. I stepped back, keeping my eyes on him through the window. My breath fogged up the glass. Then, just a little, he tilted his head, like he was listening. My heart felt like it stopped. Slowly, very slowly, he raised his hand, not to knock, not to wave. He just pressed it flat against the door. I stumbled backward and nearly fell. Every instinct screamed at me to run. When I looked back at the door, the porch was empty. No man, no footprints, no sign that anyone had ever been there. I didn't open the door until morning, and even now, years later, whenever it snows on Christmas night, I check the porch before I turn on the lights, because I still don't know how long that man stood there before he knocked.